apparently someone did a social experiment of literally the problem that communism faces everywhere around the world. And I'm curious whether or not this actually happened, but even if it didn't, historically, it is accurate. So, you have this teacher which performed a scary classroom social experiment, demonstrating how tyrannies arise from democracy. She gave a bunch of extra credit tickets to the first few students to arrive in class, and then everyone else received 1 to 2 tickets. Now, this is important because it's a common talking social justice point, and I think I even heard Vosh discuss it. Like, prominent left-leaning activists always cling to this. Vosh's Coconut Island allegory, basically. Just because, like, some people had a head start, and then life is a little bit unfair. We need to have soymonism, and we need to start the revolution due to that. And after the revolution, things will get better. So let's see what happened. Well, apparently the kids that came into class last were outraged by the injustice of those that came first and got the reward. There were no rules or direction for this day in class. I just told them I'd act as an enforcer of whatever they decided to do in the next hour. The girl circled in red was a genius. She used her charisma and charm to court the majority of her peers that had less coupons and played off the resentment of the minority that had earned more tickets for arriving to class early. In the allotted time, she convinced her peers that if they voted to give her absolute power, she would confiscate the 40-plus coupons held by the minority and she would distribute them equally. The minority of students were frustrated, but powerless against the majority vote. Emily was elected a supreme ruler position, and as promised, she confiscated all of the tickets from the minority of students that arrived to class first. That's when things began to get interesting. She kept the vast majority of tickets for herself and contributed a few of them to some of her friends. It was a microcosmos of what happened historically time and time again, and the dangers that our republic faces. I asked the students to write a reflection on how they now viewed unrestrained majority rule democracy, and their opinion has definitely changed from that day prior. Now, whether or not this experiment actually took place is unknown. However, if you look at history, this is accurate. A perfect example of this is what happened in Zimbabwe. So in Zimbabwe, there was a communist uprising, and the socialist in charge also said the same. It's not fair that there's a lot of white farmers that are holding our land, and we need to equally distribute it. So once they seized the land by force, and unlike here, it wasn't done peacefully, like it was done with a lot of bloodshed, they gave the land based on nepotism, not based on who's the greatest farmer or who has like a better idea of farming and engineering. No, like they gave it to people associated and close by to the dear leader. And this is why Zimbabwe benefited from a famine. I mean, they were on the right side of history, the people that sided with the communist leader, but they were on the wrong side of a famine. And the interesting thing is that, first of all, when you give the power, because like this experiment doesn't actually tackle reality to a T. The problem is that the enforcer, in this case the teacher, now belongs to the dear leader, to the charismatic individual. So you're going to end up with resentment on both sides. Like the people that have their tickets taken away, they're going to feel resentment because they are actually being robbed by the government. And the people that helped in putting the leader to power, and they're not getting any tickets in return now, they feel resentment as well. But guess what? They can't do anything now because the enforcement, the teacher, belongs on the side of the great dear leader. So now if they speak up, if they complain, the enforcer is going to be used against them. So before, at least they had the freedom to complain. And at least they had the freedom to try and make concessions, at least try to negotiate. I mean, there were other ways in getting those tickets other than force. But they chose not to. They chose to elect the dear leader so that it forcefully takes the tickets, right? So they used their freedoms in order to take other people's freedoms. But by doing so, now their own freedoms are taken away because the dear leader, as I mentioned, now has the power of the government, the power of enforcement, and can use it against them to suppress them. And I'll tell you what, like what happened in the Soviet Union and many other places, even the people in minority that had some tickets but didn't have all, even they will have their tickets confiscated now because the dear leader needs more tickets for their friends. And their friends is also an interesting thing here, right? Because this experiment, if it takes place in a classroom, it's one thing. But in the real world, usually these revolutions are gruesome affairs. I mean, people just don't give their tickets willingly. So you have to commit a lot of atrocities, you have to commit a lot of backstabbing, you have to do a lot of bad stuff in order to get to that point. And you can't do it alone, you need a circle of friends. Now, the circle of friends are like the hyenas in Lion King. Like, they constantly need to be fed. The moment you stop feeding them, well, your friends are going to turn on you. You've made a lot of political enemies down the line. You made a lot of people upset and angry. So, when you don't have the power, if you do not constantly feed the hyenas that the great dear leader surrounds himself with, they turn on him. And then this again, like has happened in many revolutions. Like usually the person that starts the left-leaning revolution is not the person that ends up as the dear leader. And most of the time, you end up with the leader that doesn't even share the vision of the original. Like, for example, if you look at Lenin's revolution and you look at what happened to Trotsky and the other people associated with Lenin, the moment that Stalin came in power. And you didn't even expect Stalin to come in power. Like, Stalin was basically the HR lady. Like, his job was to decide who gets, like, various jobs within the political party. And he was deciding, all right, well, you get this position and you get that position. Like, on the surface, he didn't have much power. But by putting his friends and the people that were like-minded as him in positions of power, then he could call on favors. So once Lenin passed away, he called on all the favors of the people that he placed on top, and he managed to become their leader. And this is what's happening at a lot of corporations in the United States today. It's the HR people that hold all of the power because they do the hirings, they do the firings, and they do the promotions. So when, even like if a company like Netflix, for example, wants Dave Chappelle to be on their channel, oh, now they have to deal with a worker revolt. Now you have like some HR person breaking into the room of the director while they're having a meeting. Such audacity. Why is it happening? Well, it's happening because they have created a system, a network of people, which is very difficult to uproot. And this is like on a tiny level. It's at a microcosmos inside the small company. Now imagine what happens when you put it statewide, when you put it government-wide. So yeah, this is a really great experiment. I hope it actually did happen. It's difficult to fact-check, but it is historically accurate. Like, you can look at many red uprisings that happened around the world. This is exactly how they took place, and it's why communism never works. It's because in order to have communism, you need to first seize the wealth from some people and then redistribute it. But what happens time and time again, without fail, is that the people seizing the wealth don't want to give it back. And once they have the power to seize the wealth, they also have the power to oppress anyone that complains. But anyway, right, let me know what you think, and please check out the pinned comment in the comment section. Take care.